Yo, welcome back to the Noita show.
I'm pretty much exhausted and I have to do stuff tomorrow. This is not being recorded at an optimal time, but it is being recorded at a time earlier than,
well, 2 a.m. And even 1 a.m. Pretty good. There's always something you need to do.
Hold on, let me make sure.
At the very start of these, I'm just going to make sure my audio is correct. It is! Let's go! Alright, I don't have to worry about that then. I probably shouldn't have kicked that again, but yeah, whatever. I love the physics engine in this game. It's awesome. Okay, let's go this way. Oh, frick, there's a alchemy zone. Couldn't really think of anything to say for a little bit, but now I think I have a couple ideas of stuff to talk about. Mainly, I do want to talk about Minecraft, because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with that right now. More specifically, the new updates that are coming are absurdly, like, they're just so different in comparison to past stuff that Minecraft has made, or Mojang specifically. There are a lot of new things that you wouldn't expect them to add in comparison to the recent lesser updates. And I'm really excited for it. There's... The main thing, obviously, is trial chambers, but because of the existence of trial chambers, I think we ended up getting another new mob, other than just the breeze, which is a really cool idea in and of itself, with a very, very fun item to go along with it. The main reason I think it's so awesome that we're getting new stuff is because it gives us access to a lot of things. Also, if you haven't seen, trial chambers have some really genuinely powerful loot. Like, you can get stuff up to enchanted diamond gear, you can get up to, like, efficiency 5, the best possible books, you can get mending. It's kind of absurd. You get diamonds, you get diamond armor, diamond tools. There's enchanted golden apples at a really, really low drop rate, but they can still appear. And it's kind of awesome that we're getting a new dungeon-like structure, because we don't have very many of them in Minecraft. Now, because of the trial chamber, or probably because of the trial chambers, we're also getting the Bogged, which is another new skeleton variant, which I think is awesome, because we don't have enough mob variants in the game. And the Bogged seems like an awesome idea to add for swamps. On the topic of swamps themselves, because of the addition of the update to them, I feel like it's kind of unnecessary to have the original basic swamp. It's not anywhere near as cool or interesting as mangrove swamps, and I don't know, maybe you could just combine the two to make them less... to make original swamps less boring. I understand that people may not like that with the changes, but they've fully revamped some biomes before, haven't they? Like, I guess adding sweet berries isn't a huge difference, but they've changed villages as structures pretty significantly. Feels like that's quite a major change that they just don't, I don't know, really talk about? Because old villages are very different from the newer ones. And people never really complained about it. Maybe it's just because the old villages kind of weren't great. But also, like, the mangrove swamp didn't get some of the features that they really should have implemented, like, specifically fireflies, which they didn't end up implementing because frogs are... some frogs are allergic to some fireflies. It's not even all frogs. It's specific species. Specific to a couple different species, and that's kind of the reason why I find it absurd and annoying that they didn't end up adding it to the game. Because fireflies are so... I don't know, cool as an idea. They wouldn't be difficult to add as even like a particle effect. By the way, kick ghosts. Hold on, I just needed to focus to kill him. But yeah, I don't understand why they wouldn't put fireflies into the game. Because from a standpoint of game development overall, there's no reason for them to exclude them. It's not because kids might not learn how frogs work, it has to be something in relation to either Microsoft themselves or just Mojang not being able to do it because of the limitations of the engine, because I don't think that there's any reason why they wouldn't add frogs or fireflies into the game, because the stated reasons just don't make sense. And by the way, for ghosts, you can tell where they are, or their general area that they're in, by candles being around. Back to Minecraft discussions. It feels a little absurd to just remove it, because they also have things like parrots being possible to feed cookies to and kill them. Stuff like that just doesn't track. Why would you leave a feature in that shows animal cruelty and prevent another from being added? Why not just remove both or add both? Anyway, another interesting factoid is the addition of the armadillo is incredible, because the existence of wolf armor and buffing wolves overall is incredible. They're made so much more combatively viable and so much safer, which means less tragic events will happen where you lose your wolf because of an unfortunate series of events, since they've buffed their health, and armadillo armor makes them almost invulnerable, which I think is actually a really great way to design it, because people really like dogs and pets to an absurd level. And since you can now basically add a freaking, what's the word? Enchantments, I think you can add them to dog armor. I'm not sure if that's the case, and if it's not, they absolutely should add that, because it is a cool and awesome idea. But if they don't, well, I guess there's still commands. Do armor pieces, like, for horses even work with, like, protection? Because I would think that they would, but there's no way to get it in vanilla without using commands or cheats. They're just commands now, I think. Which I think makes sense, since it's not really cheating when you're in creative mode. Perfect, he's on fire! Burn to death! Love the new health bars they added for these guys. It makes it so much cooler. Health moment. But yeah, why remove some of those things? Because the fireflies are such an awesome potential option. It feels really odd to not put them in the game. Also, there's the whole thing behind the mob vote, but really, to be honest, I understand having community engagement, but there's a lot of better ways to implement it. I think everybody has pretty much talked about this at this point. The mob vote is not well designed. I can't think of a possible standpoint where I could see it in its current state, at least, as like a proper thing that should exist. I think if maybe they just modified how it worked slightly, it would be way better. But as it stands, it just doesn't feel like a good mechanic to have in place, especially when it comes to adding, like, pretty major additions to the game. Major updates, upgrades, changes. Making big changes to the game. Why would you make only some of the possible options available when there's, like, actually incredible ideas? And I know that sometimes multiple things from the mob vote get added, or presumably have features from them that get added, but it doesn't make sense why they would do that. They have better ways of doing it, and they don't. I know that the engine itself is very limited, and the original programming behind the game kind of sucks, but it's not like they can't fix some of it. Oh, I'm gonna die. Flamaxium! Why is this here? It's so flamaxing. I'm just really focused on Minecraft stuff, because it's kind of something that I really get bothered by. Seriously, why don't they just add it all? They can't promise a very good change and then just not. Or, more accurately, you can't say that you might add something and then not. Because it makes it a lot less enjoyable. It sucks. It really sucks when the freaking Mojang developers don't add all of these amazing potential things, because they can't. I have the power to. It would just take longer. Oh, I should have pheromoned that guy. By the way, putting pheromones on chests, I'm not sure if this still works, but originally if you put pheromone on mimics, it would cause them to throw stuff at you, like gold or potions or stuff like that. It's actually a really cool feature I like. Anyway, back to Minecraft. They even added some of the stuff from mob votes into other games, or it already existed in other games of their like IP, I guess. And they just decided that they didn't feel like adding more. They didn't feel like putting it in base Minecraft. And there are some reasons why that would make sense, from either a lore standpoint or a programming standpoint, because it just takes too long to add in some features. But when you have such, like, a large and, to be honest, fairly complex game, and you offer several things to be put in that game, it feels cheated no matter what you get. Even if it is theoretically the best option, it's still going to kind of suck. No matter how the mob vote is implemented, I don't think people would see it as a positive thing to have in the game. It's not really a good way of putting it in the game and keeping people happy. There are probably ways, again, the most effective possible way for people to maybe enjoy it is that of just adding them in the order that they get voted so that everybody ends up getting what they want eventually. But even then, you're not really going to be adding them at a fast enough rate, and as we've seen with Mojang, they didn't add any of the other biome updates, or at least they haven't added them in a very, very long time. They haven't done it fast enough. Nearly fast enough. Because, again, they said they would do multiple biome updates, but they ended up only doing some of them. Obviously, that doesn't mean they won't still happen, but there's some really major ones that not only I, but a lot of people out there would like to see. You know, you have just most specifically, the main biome update that people currently are kind of miffed about is that of the birch forests. This is something that I think a lot of people would agree on, but we need those to be changed. As they stand, birch forests are not very interesting biomes. The potential rework that was shown during one of the events, I guess, during live streams, whatever you want to call it, it was really, like, a really cool potential change, right? They would have added mushrooms to the biome. They would have added a whole bunch of just genuinely awesome things that would have made it so, so much better. But they didn't. They decided that they wouldn't update it in the end. Why am I... Oh, I got hit by my own projectile. Yeah, we're switching to these. It just feels kind of unfortunate, I guess, that you can't have stuff like this added to a game that would really benefit from it overall. Minecraft as a whole needs some features that it just doesn't have. Without them, it doesn't really feel like it's complete, I guess. It needs more, and it doesn't have more. Or at least, it may not need more, but what more you're adding could certainly be improved upon. Significantly. Also, not allowing people to kill a lot of the newly added things, like not making them aggressive or dangerous mobs, kind of really sucks. Because I get that you want to make the game kid-friendly. Yeah, you want it to be available for all audiences. Sure, whatever. But you could at least make the monsters, like, have some creatures have valuable drops. Make it reasonable to defeat them. Some people would complain about it, but it's better than what they would do otherwise. Monsters need to have drops, which is why the addition of the bog is such an incredibly awesome thing. because it has an incredibly useful drop, that being poison arrows, which wouldn't normally be available at that point in the game until after you defeat the Ender Dragon, which is one of the latest parts of Minecraft. One of the last main parts that most people will do in their general progression. But if you do something like the Bogged that allows you to gain access to these resources before you go that far, it makes them more valuable and, well, more worthwhile to collect. If you just leave them behind in the end, nobody really wants damage arrows unless they're for specific player versus player encounters, and a lot of people don't do that. Don't do PvP on survival worlds with friends or anything, because it's not as fun as just playing together. Having access to poison arrows before the dragon, though, it makes things easier to deal with. You can defeat some higher tier mobs more effectively, like blazes, for example, which are normally a pain with even fire resistance potions. With any arrows that could increase the damage dealt to them, you could just sit behind a wall and shoot at them every once in a while. But without that, without access to tipped arrows before the dragon, it's pointless for people to use them because they already will have better gear at that point. What's the point of getting poison arrows when your bow already has power 5? You'll already one-shot most things, and if you don't, you can just put the arrow into a frickin' overpowered acceleration device that turns it into a cannon that does 12 million damage in a single hit, because arrows' damage is based upon the speed they're moving at. Which is cool, but, you know, becomes possible at that point in the game. And once you've reached that point, there's no reason to go after stuff like arrows that are tipped. Unless you want to do certain events or have fun in multiplayer with them through PvP. There's never much of a reason to go after arrows, tipped arrows, post Ender Dragon, which is when they're unlocked. So if Mojang made them accessible pre-dragon by either making a type of skeleton for each type of arrow, or just making it so that they don't require Dragon's Breath to craft, it would make it much more desirable to go after them. Of course, that's just a balancing issue, but it feels like it kind of deserves to be put more into the game than it is, since arrows are kind of a really fun tool, especially when paired with stuff like a crossbow with multi-shot, because multi-shot actually allows you to do pretty much whatever you want with arrows. You can get a lot of them. And it's also the reason why people tend to use crossbows more, because they have something unique to them that makes them way better than arrows and bows. That is, that they deal set damage, basically. They have sure enchantments, but they're always going to go at the same speed. They just take a little bit to load. And also, of course, fireworks, which are pretty busted, all things considered, because they're useful at 2 points in the game, those being before the dragon and after. Before, because crossbows, which allow you to deal an F ton of damage, and after being in Elytra, which allow you to fly, literally fly, for the fastest form of movement in the entire game. And yet, we have tipped arrows, the only advantage bows get other than maybe power 5 or infinity. And what do? Temporarily apply potion effects to enemies, or very shortly apply potion effects. It's just not good enough for a lot, or pretty much for anything. There's no reason to ever go after it because you don't need it. But if they had something like, I don't know, let's say skeleton type for every type of tipped arrow, like I said, it would suddenly make them not only much more accessible, but more viable. And with that viability, it'd be more fun. You'd have more access to more tools and weapons to progress through the game more effectively and efficiently. And to be frank, it's a lot better than what we've got right now. We really really need access to more weapon diversity in Minecraft. Because what we have is kind of meh. Sure, there's quite a few weapons, but they aren't really as good as they could be. And there are some that are really awesome, but aren't useful because they're only accessible after you beat the final boss of the game. And a lot of the good gear you're going to have before the final boss. So the addition of trial chambers makes a lot of sense because you can gain access to that good gear better. And even a lot of potions before even going to the nether. It's such a great implementation of a feature that allows you to gain access to some resources that you wouldn't normally be able to by going through a little bit of difficulty. There's no reason for them to not add stuff that makes the game more enjoyable, like more weapons, obviously. But if they don't add better ways to gain access to a lot of resources, it just becomes annoying to get them. It feels like stupid in a lot of cases. It makes me angry that I have to deal with a lot of the collection for them. Because in order to even get access to tipped arrows, you have to go to the end. You cannot gain access to anything but slowness arrows as of base Minecraft unless you've gone to the end with potion bottles and gotten Dragon's Breath, which is in and of itself difficult to get because you need to manage to get near enough to the dragon's projectile area of effect zone in order to actually collect it, but you also need to avoid being hit and taking damage, which in the first place is a really cool feature, not again, but the issue behind it is it's only accessible after the dragon fight, or maybe during it if you want to be nitpicky with how you say things. Yes, you could theoretically take all the required things with you that you need to create tipped arrows while in the end, but it doesn't matter because tipped arrows don't work against anything in the end, with the only exception being that of shulkers. And if you think anybody is going to be using arrows against shulkers, specifically tipped arrows against shulkers, I'm not sure what you're thinking about. Because shulkers are great at avoiding taking damage, because they hide in their shells, which causes them to become incredibly damage resistant. Sure, Flamaxium! Sure, you have access to them, but there's not really much of a point with anything other than damage 2, because, well, that's the only type of arrow that does more damage. Unless you count damage 1, which just does slightly more damage and isn't worth it. Because they're both instant, not over time. Technically, there's poison arrows, but there's no reason for those because, well, they don't do their damage nearly fast enough. And that just kind of sucks. Hi, buddy. It's not... it just sucks that there's no way for me to say, like, Mojang, please, make this change. And then they actually make it. And there's not really a way for anybody to do that. Because there aren't really any people who have that power. I don't know. There's a lot I can still say, but there's not much reason to point it out at this point. It won't cause any change to happen. I just like to talk about it. It's not even like a need, I just like mentioning it. Lets me think about everything. No matter how crazy it may seem sometimes, Mojang does actually add stuff that's incredibly important to the game. Stuff that we genuinely need, and that's shown in the bogs and in the caves and cliffs. Things that the people requested and got into the game. The bog itself isn't too much of a request, or more of a too much of a direct request, but it does showcase that at least they're adding more enemy types into the game with actual drops, with that being the bogged, of course, and the existence of the really, really, really important breeze. Because the breeze got added into the game, we now actually have a new way of traveling, that being breeze charges, which I think are probably one of the best additions to Minecraft ever. Anybody who doesn't agree with that, yeah, I don't understand why Elytra exists, but the existence of breeze charges, wind charges, I guess they're actually called, the existence of them just makes the game a lot better. They add a much-needed pre-dragon way of gaining height effectively. Sure, you may have had jump boost potions and potentially even, I don't know, stuff like... What? What do you even have? Beacons, sometimes? That's about it. Beacons and jump boost potions, the jump boost effect specifically from beacons. And then maybe, if you're lucky, you can just use blocks to move up, but it's not nearly as fun, or for that matter, effective as many of the other methods that they've, or specifically the one other method that they've added to the game. Breeze charges, wind charges, whatever you want to call them, are an amazing addition. And without them, there are a lot of things that would never have been put into the game. And more specifically, a lot of things that we need. And what do you mean, context? It's only one item. Well, it's several things. Like I said, a new enemy with an actual drop, which we absolutely needed because, well, there weren't enough of enemies with awesome drops. Actually useful drops in the game. And it also adds a new item. It shows that Mojang is listening, because they're adding better diversity into the mob cast, as well as the trial chamber itself, showing that they're paying attention to what the community wants. We wanted better dungeons for a while, if I remember correctly. That was something that people really, really wanted, that it's been talked about for a while. Something that was suggested repeatedly that Mojang eventually and finally has decided to go for. If you count the Deep Dark, I guess that's another potential way to show that they've been adding really, really interesting and cool things, but... This is Scott Frick. We can't beat that guy. We can't even run past him. Unless we do this. What do we have? Additional slots? Yeah, we'll probably go for that one. And take it. Well, I think that's my video essay. It's not like there's much else important to say about Minecraft's recent additions to the game. There have been quite a lot of good ones, and I'm glad that they're actually working on stuff that people genuinely want. And thanks to them, we're finally going to get a new, really cool enemy type. Actually, two. I kind of hope we get more skeleton variants. Because the bogged is cool, but I want to see stuff that actually gives other potential effects. And most specifically, I want to see a skeleton that could drop arrows that give the wither debuff. And that's mostly just because there's no other way to get it other than, I guess, a wither rose. There's no way to get it before the nether. Which, yeah, that makes sense. But there's also no way to get it outside of Wither Rose. There's no damaged projectile or weapon or even potion that can apply it. Which sucks, because it's like genuinely a really, really interesting effect. It's just damage over time, but it can kill you. Which is unlike all the other damage over times in Minecraft. Or more specifically, unlike poison, which on its own can't kill you, just weaken you. Wither's a little bit faster, and it just feels different. It's just like the nether version of poison. Anyway, that's my what the frick is going on with Minecraft and all of my opinions on that. Thank you for watching, if you actually did. I cannot believe I managed to go through an entire episode without dying and while talking about something interesting the whole time, at least interesting to me. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Do the YouTube things. But, most importantly, have an absolutely golden day. Bye!